really know what's going on over there other than everybody's dumb.
The instant you step out of line, you say something that they don't like and they don't like you personally, they're going to use all those pre-existing laws and they're going to use it on you.
Woman exposed her male genitalia to women and underage girls. That's what happened.
It's pure propaganda and it's super cringe, by the way. It's super cringe.
Back. Eric's back. That's Eminem, Eric, if you're not familiar with that. E-Minum, some pronounce him as. Marshall Mathers. Whatever, Eric. All right, we're back after a week off with Liam from Liam Out Loud. How are you doing, good sirs?
Good, man. Good. I'm excited to be here.
I'm wearing a Super Mario shirt, forgetting that I have a Mario thing in the background. I promise you I'm not that obsessed with Super Mario.
It's for the Twitch viewers.
Yeah, for the 3 people on Twitch, but we're also on Getter, we're on YouTube, and Twitter, where the bulk of you are probably watching, or you're listening on Spotify and all that other jazz, such as Google Music or whatever it's called, and Apple iTunes, whatever that's called too now. But thank you for listening. Eric, what'd you do on your week off?
Dude, that was like a week ago. I don't even really remember.
It was, yeah.
Dude, I honestly don't remember. You put me on the spot. It couldn't have been that eventful. It's still, fairly hot, so it's not like back in New York or even San Francisco. People used to like hang out at the park and drink wine. But it's far too hot to do that here. So I was probably in some weird YouTube K-hole of I don't know something that they recommend to me, and then 6 hours later I'm still doing that. That's probably what happened, honestly.
I've never heard of it as a YouTube K-hole. That's pretty drug related, Eric. Maybe usually a wormhole is what people go with.
Sorry, rabbit hole.
You do what you got to do.
Rabbit hole.
Liam, where are you coming to us from?
I'm out of Toronto, actually. So yeah, no, it's
right. Okay.
No, not too hot up here. We can still go outside and we can drink our wine in the parks. But
yeah, I'm not sure you can actually. I think in Montreal you can do that. You could do it. Is it legal? I don't know.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's one of those things where as long as you're just not being rowdy and out of control, then nobody's really going to say anything to you. At least once a week I'm walking down the street with a beer in my hand in Toronto too. So it's like I've never even really got asked anything about it. So,
well, in Toronto, you can also live in a park or live at City Hall and they're not really going to do anything. So
in San Francisco and New York, of course.
Well, Eric, we're going to go to Minnesota, one of your most favorite places first, I think, where they're just, this is the follow-up story to a story that already happened where this teachers union said that they're going to, they struck a deal with the teacher, the school board, the teachers union struck a deal with saying that if the person that's about to be laid off is non-white, and they determine that the teacher is from a underrepresented minority or community, then they can forego laying off that person and they can lay off the next least senior white person. So not only do they get rid of seniority in that case, and they can do that if there's like state or county wide layoffs, but they can do it for the person who's the next white person. So many layers to unpack from that as we use jargon such as unpack. We're grouping everybody who's non-white together. Everybody's got a different experience, but you're saying it's all the same. As long as they're not white, then we can pass over them because they're saying the hiring practices before were discriminatory, so they're making up for that. So they're doing their own little like reparations, equity outcome. Eric, let me get your opinion first on that. Just a reaction before we get to what the teachers union representative came out and said afterwards. Do you have any comments on that?
Well, I'm actually, now that you bring it up, I'm curious to hear what the union said about it because I don't trust those teachers unions as far as I can throw them. Now, my family, I am not a teacher. I've never been a teacher. I've never wanted to be a teacher, but in my family, there are some teachers and they are, dude, in this weird way, they are like beholden to these weird unions. They owe their livelihood, their entire career to these unions. My experience with the union is far less enjoyable, but that's a completely different story. And I made the joke on Instagram. Of course, this was a joke. It didn't need to be fact checked or given context or anything. But I was joking, and I feel like maybe Babylon B can cut the check or something. But there's only a matter of time until the word layoff gets changed, because I saw some post, I think it was Bloomberg or Business Week or something, one of these like quote unquote business publications that I follow, and it says 50% of American companies are planning layoffs or something. And there's only what's the old saying, is that the truth and the conspiracy theory is only 8 months apart or something like that. So I think there's only a matter of time before we even change what the word layoff means. And this is maybe this is a little bit of a stretch, but it seems like that's exactly what's going to happen here. So a black person now can't get laid off in this particular teachers union, and that's going to spread, and it's all just going to be completely terrible. But I'll leave it there, and I am, because I don't know much about this story. I saw the headline, didn't really read it. I was totally a headline warrior on this one, but I am curious to know what the teachers union has to say about this and how they're going to defend it, I guess.
Well, I dove all the way deep. I'll save my bad language for the second half of the podcast, I guess. But I dove all the way into it, and they came up with this agreement that if the teacher is from what they determine to be an unrepresented minority group, then they will keep that person, and they will skip the least senior, because they go on seniority in unions like this. They're going to go to the next white person who's underneath them in terms of having the fewer time in. Now, they also put a provision in there which says that if they're doing, school board wide layoffs or county wide layoffs, that they can also use that rule to forego, letting go. So usually it'd be like a bulk of people that are being laid off. Instead, if let's say 5 of those people are non-white people, then they can skip over them and get rid of 5 white people. Liam, you have any? What do you think? And we'll go for you for the bright side here. What do you think's the best way we can take this? Do you have any opinion on that?
Like a devil's advocate position, perhaps? Is that
maybe? Yeah.
You know what? I am not the guy to give a devil's advocate position on that one. I've got pretty strong opinions on it. I mean, it's pretty easy to see the playbook they're instilling. You see people, the academics that are doing these diversity and inclusivity trainings, the Ibram X. Kendis and all of that. Even he has a quote where it's the only remedy to past discrimination is present discrimination. So as you were talking about earlier, it was kind of like a reparations kind of thing where, they're trying to make it up for bad hiring practices of the past. It's like, well, okay, no matter what you're discriminating, it's like there's somebody on the shit end of that stick. So it's like you can't get away with any positive discrimination in that sense, as far as like immutable characteristics, whether that be your race, sexuality, gender, any of it. And I think it's a slippery slope, man. This whole equity idea of we're just going to level things out. I mean, it's straight out of the Marxist playbook. I just did a video breaking down where all these ideas come from. And it's like, if you take Marxism and you just, instead of doing it between classes of proletariat and bourgeoisie, but instead you just draw a straight line definitively between races and say, okay, white cis males make up the bourgeoisie, and the a disabled trans black person would be the proletariats. And they're just trying to equality across the board that way. And I think that's even going to be more devastating than the idea of switching things up by class. This whole equity based on, as I said earlier, immutable characteristics it goes downhill. And I mean, we're even getting that stuff up here in Canada already. I know Ontario last year, they did the Ontario's teacher union did a thing where if 50-50 representation between minority and whites didn't naturally show up, then they're going to downweight the votes of the white teachers and essentially uprank the votes of the minority teachers to give them a 50-50 voice. So it's like, even if it was, say, 75% white people, 25% minorities, it's like they're just going to cut that so that it's 50-50 weights voted. And it's like, I don't see any way that this doesn't go poorly. So it's like, it's a pretty hard position to steal, man, to be honest, on the other side. Like, there's been zero anywhere that these kind of policies have been instituted. They don't yield results at all. So it's, yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do forget after you bring it up that this is all still like the textbook Marxism. You just sort of replace the group for which you want to be as the upper class versus the struggling underclass. Usually it's like farmers. We see that in Africa and China and Vietnam, I think. I'm not as familiar with why Vietnam became communist as the other ones, but they'll find a group that's supposedly, targeted and underrepresented and oppressed, and they will say these are the people who are oppressing you. It's called the permanent underclass, I believe. And in this case, they'll go with whatever works. They'll go with race if that's what works, and they'll go if we were in some weird environment where it was like teachers versus students, they'd say the students are always underrepresented. But I should point out that in most cases they do manipulate the students and the children to be against their parents. There's this documentary I watched about the uprising of communism in China, and they would give them the Book of Mao. I don't remember what the specific name of that is, but the children would all carry around their Maoist books. And if a kid didn't have it, they'd say, "Where's your book? Don't you love the leader?" And they'd beat him up if he didn't have it. Or if the teacher said something against the state, the children would then revolt against the teacher and, narc them out and or maybe beat them anyways. But Eric's very curious as to what this says.
Well, hey, first of all, I just want to
Yeah.
say that example you gave actually sounds like a Simpsons episode where they trust the leader bean. I don't know if you
Yes.
but I wanted
love
to
the
say,
leader.
yeah, the leader bean. And we see this in other aspects of the culture as well. Is I think they want to create these self-fulfilling prophecies, right? So once you have a handful of bad teachers that just can't get fired. We're not even talking about tenure or anything. They just can't get fired because of this silly rule. So you're going to have a bunch of bad teachers, and then when people start say, this guy's not actually really good at his job, or this woman or they them or whatever is not really good at their job, then they're going to sit there and say, see, we told you didn't like us, and it's like you created this. I use the example over and over again about the BLM mob protesters who were walking around New York when you had to eat outside because it wasn't safe to eat inside, and they're drinking beers off an old couple's table who has nothing to do with this. It's like, an old retired couple, and they stop and drink the beer off the table, and then that couple says, well, I don't really like these people, and they look back at them and say, well, we knew you hated us. So it kind of feels to me like they're setting it up to where they want to fulfill their weirdo equity or inclusion or whatever it is. They want to fulfill that stuff. So when you do get angry and you do call out these people who might not be qualified or should have been fired months ago, when you start to call it out, then of course they can say this is the problem. And last little bit here, anecdotally, I know that the plural of anecdote isn't proof or whatever. I don't know how that saying goes, but how long has these poor teaching practices been happening? Because my mother has been a teacher. She just retired. She was a teacher for 30 whole years, and she's Black. So I'm just not quite sure when those bad practices that kept Black teachers out of the industry, it just all, they're just counting on it, nobody actually looking into this stuff. They throw it at the wall and then tell you that if you don't agree with it, you're basically a racist. And we're living through the results of these type of policies, and it's never going to end, apparently. I don't know.
Well, Eric, maybe I don't know. Minneapolis and Minnesota is, of course, where Elon and Omar is, where the alleged, let's just call it bad doings of a certain voting thing happened, since we're on YouTube, where the guy's driving around in the car and he's, look how many ballots I have. And then and this is where they defunded police. They rioted about the guy who tried to steal kidnapped his child and tried to steal his ex-wife's car, and then went for a knife and got shot by police. So that's the place we're talking about. Teachers union officials extremely proud about agreement to lay off white teachers first, adding it's a non-story. So I read this yesterday. They did it in a video statement. Like I said, I mentioned all this before. If accessing, which is their word for laying off, accessing a teacher who's a member of a population underrepresented among licensed teacher in the site, the district shall access the next least senior teacher who's not a member of an underrepresented population. So if they deem that your population of, American Samoans is underrepresented, then they're going to lay off the next closest white people.
And
So
just
here's,
imagine the resentment that you're breeding with this stuff.
Yeah.
It's like when
of course,
it's just
I
crazy.
was fired because I was white, and the person who was above me was actually 1/4 Vietnamese. We're underrepresented. Here, so this is the union president talking. Her name is Greta Callahan. So this says this contract language was something that we are, first of all, extremely proud of for achieving, but it also doesn't go far enough, Eric Butler of TatumReport.com. We need to support and retain our educators, especially those who are underrepresented. And this language does one tiny minuscule step towards that. Doesn't solve the real crisis we are in right now. So they've instituted a racist practice that if you change the race in any which way at all, which would still be wrong, and they would freak out about it. But this doesn't go far enough to discriminate people by race, is what she's saying. Then Marcia Howard, the vice president, I don't know which one's which, but they both look happy. Her thing was also a little bit stupid, and by a little bit, I mean a little stupid and a lot stupid as well. This is the language that we put out and went out and marched for. So she's referring to when they set the buildings on fire, and they're like, "Oh, it's a mostly peaceful."
Were those
I believe that was in
marches
Minnesota.
happening while other people weren't even allowed to go to work? Is that one of those marches?
Yes.
Okay.
We voted this. The district and the union agreed upon this, and now it's coming out because some Minnesota website decided to put it out there, and the mega media picked it up. So she's saying, like right there, it's I know it's easy to pick people's statements apart. You could do it to me, you could do it to any of us, but she's saying right there, we voted on this, and the union and the district agreed upon this, and that somehow then justifies it, is what she's basically saying there. And we're waiting for mainstream media to run the story. It's a non-story, she says. It was language about the event on layoffs, and we are nowhere near having layoffs this year. We're down like 250 teachers. We're down. There are no layoffs. So I ask y'all why. Why is this a story? So it's not a story, according to her, because it's already been agreed upon. So therefore, I guess it can't be racist. But it's also not a story because we're not even doing layoffs right now. We have so few teachers. We're not even doing layoffs. So how can this be a story? That's like saying, I've got $1 million right now. Why would I save any money? I'll never be poor. So you don't need to save any money because I've got the $1 million right now. So there's no plan, or there's no need to plan for the future. Eric, does this change your attitude towards this at all now that you've got some more info there that you desperately required?
No, I just have this. I just don't like these unions. I think they're complete. I mean, look, I had one personal experience with a union when I was fresh out of college. It tainted the entire experience. And then you fast forward. I don't want to date myself here, but you fast forward a handful of years to listening to some of these teachers unions out in New York, and watch them scramble to the bottom. You have the corrupt Bill de Blasio administration and the corrupt teachers union. And it's just crazy watching them out corrupt each other. So to answer the question, no, this doesn't change my opinion at all. Well, might actually make this even a little bit worse than what I originally thought. And we're it's obviously very silly, but I can't help. I noticed the little headline on the side there is talking about Brian Stelter, and it almost feels like is this why Don Lemon still has a job but Brian Stelter doesn't? I mean, they seem to be playing a very similar game over there too. So I don't know. This is a complete joke. Get your kids out of these public schools, man, if you have the capacity. I don't have kids yet that I know of, so I'm not too worried about it, but it's vicious out there. It's brutal.
Yeah,
I know we always show the writers of the articles that are terrible, so let's just show the writer of a good article. It's pretty much just straight news. Leave on from Red State. What were you going to say, Liam?
I was just going to make a mention too that schools are the epicenter for every revolution. The education system was literally instilled to create an industrial revolution. Like if you go look back to when public school started being a thing, it was in the 1840s by a guy named Horace Mann, who said that public school would be the only way to make the unruly mass into a judicious one. And then it was Rockefeller who funded the General Education Board and appointed his right-hand business advisor as the head of it. And so they literally created the whole school system just to create mindless factory workers. That's why, desks are lined up the way they are. That's why the same bells that you would hear in a factory in the early 1900s are there. It's the exact same time schedule, and it kind of worked both two ways. It was to train the next generation of factory workers, but then also to give daycare. Essentially, it's like like indoctrination daycare to the parents' kids that would be first employed in this first wave of massive industrial revolution. And if you go back and look at, there's a paper called the Country School of Tomorrow. It was the first paper they ever released, and it was 1913. And one of the first lines in our vision is because they detailed their vision for the whole public school system was in our dreams. The masses will perfectly mold themselves to our hand. And it goes on to say how they won't use public school to make free thinkers, artists, lawyers, all of which they claimed they had an abundance of already. And so it's like that's what the school system is designed for. Our system itself, like the curriculums have obviously changed, what's taught and all that, gets updated every once in a while. I mean, it takes forever, but it's like the system itself is still meant to very much just to spit out those people. So it's like if now everything is about the woke ideology stuff, it's like that is going to be indoctrination. I don't care what the idea is. If you sit and listen to ideas for 8 hours a day for 13 years, 5 times a week, like you're going to take those ideas in. So it's like the school system is so important, and that's why I actually look at the public schools right now, and I look at all that kind of stuff that all those policies that they're putting in, and I'm like, this is like the start of the changeover. If people don't kind of see that, and parents don't say, hey, like, wait, what are you teaching our kids? We want you to teach them 2 + 2, not that they're better than fucking the person next to them. Like, and if you look at literacy rates, even when public school was instituted for the first time, because it started in Massachusetts in like 1850, and then pretty much everywhere in the world had public schools by 1900. And if you look at the literacy rates when they first started public schooling, it significantly declined from the kids that were learning at home. And it's still the same thing to today. If you look at literacy rates now, it's terrible. Like something like 60% of Americans read at under an 8th grade level. It's like, our public school systems are not teaching people. It's just behavior implementation, essentially.
And I want to throw back to go ahead, Eric.
Oh no, well, I was just gonna kind of like piggyback on that. There's a couple things. So when we talk about this decline of literacy rates and all that stuff, I mean, I think about even when I was in school, like I don't even remember that stuff. I wasn't retaining this stuff. So maybe that's probably not a good way to even look at it, right? So if I managed to get through elementary, high school, and college, and just kind of floating through, it doesn't seem like they're really putting the screws to anybody. Now, I managed to claw my way out of that weird California indoctrination. But it's another thing that we see too with like how, you have a guy like Bernie Sanders who wants to start school earlier. So kindergarten, 5 years old, 4 years old, or whatever, that's not soon enough. We need to get them in there at 2.5. And then you have guys like Gavin Newsom, who is out touting right now, like, oh, we're going to give all the kids of California $1,500 for their college education. It's like all you're doing is pumping out these you're pumping out these people that aren't going to question your weird mask mandates while you're at the French Laundry. So Bernie wants to bring down the age. Newsom wants to pay these kids to go to college, and they're of course going to tout it as though we just, we just care so much about your future, when obviously they're just manipulating people and I guess sort of I guess you're buying votes. I don't even know. Like, I mean, it's the long con, right? And that's what we know. And perhaps the right wing or the common sense center needs to get a little bit better at the long con, because the left will tell you every day and night that, yeah, we'll give you money for college, so in 18 years you're going to belong to us. It's very it's kind of like a Chinese thing. I met some Chinese people when I was living in New York who had their college paid for, and they basically like defected or deflected, and they didn't go back, so they're kind of like on the run from China. Neither here nor there, different story. But this is really dark stuff, and I think that on just a very simplistic level, they want nothing more than to pump out more of these people who aren't going to question you when you say put on a mask to walk from the front door of a restaurant to the table. That's
all school does, right? Because if you think about it, yeah, like you were saying, what information do you really remember? Like, I'd have to learn Pythagorean theorem all over again. I mean, you can't even say that anymore because I guess Pythagoras was had some racist comments, so they renamed that. They renamed his theorem, but yeah, but if you really think about it, what you learn in school is behavior. You learn that somebody will tell you what's worth learning. They will also tell you how to learn about it. It's more about spitting back what you're taught verbatim than it is interpreting it for yourself and bringing a creative idea to the forefront. I even remember that, like, growing up in school, I never did homework or anything. I did pretty well in school, but I remember I always would get in shit for just kind of like, asking questions like, that weren't necessarily appropriate to ask, like, how credible is this, kind of trying to poke holes in things. And those are considered the bad students. The good students are the ones that, just write out the formula exactly as you gave it to them. So you just really learn it's more about learning to respect authority in that sense, for sure.
Absolutely.
I wanted to throw back to how Ontario had its sex ed curriculum written by a guy who's a child sex offender. Another great Canadian.
I didn't know that.
Ontario, I believe it was 2009. The curriculum before the last Ford instituted, the guy was charged with prawn of the child type.
Jeez.
Possession.
Well, that's the same thing. Even if you look at all the gender ideology academics that like got it off and like really started, like the Michael Foucault and Michael Foucault in particular, he was charged with, or sorry, they were more allegations, but sorry, I'm getting some feedback here.
Right, that's from sharing the audio. Go ahead.
No worries. Yeah, he actually, one of his collaborators came out and said that, yeah, the allegations were true, that in some of the third world countries where Foucault was going and doing his studying for these gender theory stuff, he was like getting little kids to fuck, and like he was getting right into it as well. And it's like, these are the people that are instituting these like diversity and inclusivity ideas, like, or the same thing with these, sex ed and teachers. It's like, we got to maybe question, like, hey, what kind of person wants to take a career in, teaching sex ed to kids or whatever? It's like one thing to put into that position. It's another if you're like, I really want to build this curriculum. I really want to teach the kids.
And then you end up doing TikToks all day about how they respect your pronouns or whatever. And then we have a bunch of these kids. We see these videos. And again, a little more anecdotal evidence, but we see these videos. What's the guy's name who's going super viral the past? Justin Awad and Fleckus. And these kids, they don't know their ass from their elbow. They don't know the Civil War from a ham sandwich. They don't know anything, but you can ask them, all 5 Kardashians, and they nail it. So dark stuff.
Oh, I know who you're talking about now. Yeah, that guy's blowing up. It's sort of like, it gets to the point where you see it once, and I was like, I don't want to listen to people be stupid anymore. I ran into that problem with a lot of the, protest interview things, but the echo we're getting is from this, the window from this Fauci video. So let's play it.
For 14 days, should she get a flu shot?
Well, no. If she got the flu for 14 days, she's as protected as anybody can be, because the best vaccination is to get infected yourself.
And
if she really has the flu, she definitely doesn't need a flu vaccine. If she really has the flu,
she should not get it again.
No, she doesn't need it, because it's the most potent vaccination is getting infected yourself.
And we're back.
Imagine if we got a copyright or community guideline strike for a video of what Fauci said, of saying like, that's not because you're not allowed to doubt. I believe one of the rules is you can't doubt the efficacy of any vaccine on there. Eric, I know you have something to say here. I know it in my bones.
Well, obviously Fauci has been flip-flopping since the very beginning. We all remember the other clip where he's like, well, it doesn't provide the perfect protection. And then you fast forward 6 or 8 months and he says, well, it just makes common sense to wear too. It just makes. So obviously this guy has been completely compromised. I don't know who he works for, Soros or some weird pharmaceutical overlord. I don't know what's going on. This guy, look, bro, he's older than Joe Biden. You won, bro. You beat the game. You, Pelosi, Biden, you guys all beat the game. No matter what you do, what Sam Harris just went viral for saying he doesn't care if Hunter Biden had a basement full of kids. Nothing is going to happen to these people. No matter what they do, no matter how terrible of things that come out, nothing's going to happen to these people. They've already won. I wish they would just leave us alone. I know that's a big ask, but it's like, you did it. You were the highest paid government employee. You are untouchable. You could literally, as the great Donald Trump once said, he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and nothing would happen. You all beat the game. Just leave us alone. Like the great Nancy Pelosi once said, we would be better governed by a glass of water with a D on it. I mean, just go away, guys. You're not helping anybody. And I don't know, people still think, oh, we'll get the shot. It's free. And I said this 100 times, but it always bears repeating. How did we go from, hey,
Did we lose him? We lost him.
Oh, I think we might have lost him.
He's frozen. They got to him. They got to
him.
I have this old video of Fauci from, I believe, the 80s. He's on CBS, and he's talking about AIDS. And very shadow banned that video. I don't know how anybody wouldn't have been able to see that. But he's back there saying in the 80s that they know so little about AIDS that he said that it's possible that you could get it from sitting next to a person. They said that if you're in a house with somebody who's HIV positive or had AIDS, that they're seeing evidence that you can get it just from, I forget the word they used, but they meant like regular day-to-day contact, which is insane. And if you compare that to how they talked about everything for COVID, you could make an argument that they don't know shit right from the beginning and they're just putting all this stuff out. And now we're seeing, I don't know if you saw, a former CDC employee or current, I can't remember, said that they're going through a big reflectionary period now. They've dropped all those guidelines that they just had.
The CDC
and said everybody's to be treated the same.
Yeah, the CDC director said they actually need to do like a top to bottom, essentially flip of even the staff of the CDC, that they're just like the handling was so bad that we need to readdress everything, even employment. And I mean, that makes sense. Like, how can you're going to be the sole arbiter of truth for the whole 2 years of a pandemic, and I can't think of anything that they got right. They were wrong on masking. They were wrong on lockdowns. They were wrong on vaccines. Like they completely made false remarks time and time again. It's just
I'm trying to think. I remember the surfaces thing was a big thing for a while, and they're wrong about that.
Yeah.
I think the one thing that they got right, this might not even have been them that reported it, but they said the chances of you getting it outside were less than 1%, and there had been no recorded instances of it, which begs the question as to why, and you're from Toronto, you know this, there's still people riding bikes with masks on.
Wild.
I saw a girl on an electric scooter riding it with a mask on down the street by herself. I'm just wondering why.
Yeah, well,
I just have, there's zero scientific basis for it.
And I was saying, well, it goes into psychological priming in a sense where it's just, going back to the same thing about even the school. It's like you repeat something enough times, it's indistinguishable from truth. If it's just narratives. We like to think that humans, learn by taking in information and looking at it objectively and then going, oh, like this is 2 + 2 = 4. Okay, go from here. But really how we learn is stories. Like we get attached to narratives that drive our emotions, and that's normally how we come to our conclusions on things. So it's like I look at those people and I don't think there's any science. Like if you asked them as to like what are you doing to, what information did you see that's making you want to wear this mask outside right now. I don't think they could actually do it, but they could definitely tell you about how they feel about you not wearing one, and all of this. So it's like it's all just emotions, and I don't even get mad at those people. But I was recently talking to a family member about it, and I was like, because I moved out of the city after the second lockdowns, when I was like, okay, this is going to be a reoccurring theme. I was just like, I don't want to be in the city for these anymore. Like, I'd rather move back home where I've got a backyard, can like my parents hot tub. And then I was like, all right, move back a year later. And I was mentioning to somebody in my family, I was like, I don't enjoy the city anymore for that reason, because it's like you see all these people wearing masks outside and stuff. And, she said to me, she was like, well, you can't really, get upset at them. And it's like, it's not that I'm upset at them. It's just like, it shows me where everybody's mental health is at here, essentially, where everybody's kind of living in this stressed, scared state. And, I think mental health is just as contagious as any other aspect of health. Like, you put yourself in a room with 5 people that have the flu, you're probably going to get the flu. You put yourself in a room with 5 people that are extremely depressed, it's not going to take you long before you start feeling depressed. So it's like, I look at that and it's like, there's so many people now that are so scared and that stressed. And it's like, that rubs off on you for sure. And so that's definitely a thing in the city, and it's wild to see.
For sure. All right, Eric's back.
Dude,
We've
I don't
got him
know.
back now.
Technical difficulties, man. I don't know where I left off. But the last thing I wanted to say about that stupid clip of Fauci is, how come we just never saw anybody say, hey, we think this will work for you, look into it, ask your doctor about it. It went straight from them pretending that everybody wanted it. Oh, it's 65 and over. Oh, it's 50 and over now. Okay, 35, 20. Now everybody can get it. And then when people still didn't really want it, they said, oh, well, here's a cheeseburger, here's a beer, here's a donut, whatever it was.
Those were good times, Eric.
Great times. But and all of that, and all of those bribes, so keeping it scarce as though everybody was just going to knock down the door, and then going to the bribes, and then telling you couldn't even go to work. And in between any of that, nobody just said, hey, we've been working on this tirelessly for the past 8 months. We think it's going to be beneficial for you. If you're worried about Rona, it's free if you want it. We never heard that. It just went straight to the, like, we're going to put the screws to these people, almost as if there was some sort of backdoor deal going on. So that's what I remember I was thinking when my internet, by this terrible monopoly.
You need Starlink, bro.
I have Cox cable.
My brother has Starlink out on the East Coast.
Okay. Well, anyways, I forget what I missed, but I'm back, and now I'm turned up. I'm even more angry about the technical difficulties.
Well, I'd like to point out, and it's hard for people in Canada to remember, that a third of Americans never got the jab, as they call it. I don't even like saying that.
I don't like it either.
Yeah. A third of Americans didn't even get it.
I usually just say get inoculated.
100 million people, which is like triple the population of Canada, which is like we're at 90%, but only a third of people have the booster, which is the same thing, obviously, but it's just interesting that there's still that many people. And it came up when I was talking about Charlie Kirk, how he came out as being unvaccinated, and I was a little bit surprised by that, how hard he was willing to go for it. But there's an audience for it in the US, where there is there's not that many people. There's 10% of people in Canada, and most of them are probably underage that didn't get it. And everywhere you go, we were just talking while you're gone, Eric, how there's still just people outside wearing masks, riding bikes wearing masks. You still have, to this day, if I'm not mistaken, have to wear a mask on public transit in Toronto, which is absolutely insane.
I think they actually took the mandate off. I think they took the mandate off, but they still
did. They?
Yeah, that was about like a month or two ago. I think they took the mandate off, but they still it's on the announcement, like, regular. It's like, we would still like you to do it. Yeah.
So do you guys are you guys?
CDC strongly recommends continued mask as provincial mandate ends. Maybe in June, I guess it ended.
Okay, yeah, that sounds about right.
Face masks are mandatory when traveling on the TTC. It still says on their website, though.
Oh, really? Wow.
So who's really enforcing this, though? I know, like, when you think of our big cities, New York and San Francisco and Los Angeles, you see these videos going viral every day. Uber driver gets beat up, taxi driver, store ransacked. So they're not, it doesn't sound like you guys have.
In
quite
Toronto,
the,
it's supposed to be the bus driver.
the bus
that does
driver.
it.
But so what about? I mean, do you guys have the other problems that we are clearly dealing with now? Sure, I'm sure the news and the social media is amplifying some of these problems, but I can tell you from experience, just living in New York, like it's pretty brutal stuff out there. Like, you know,
Well,
you
the
could.
stabbings aren't. You don't have to worry about getting stabbed unless you're like in specific areas in Toronto. Where in New York, it just seems like you go into a store, you might get robbed. Is the difference?
Yeah, I mean, people they'll take still fake Yeezys off your feet, and you know, I mean, we saw the
As they should.
the bishop, which I don't know what the difference is between a bishop and a priest or pastor or whatever. I don't know too much about it,
Oh,
but
wow.
the guy, they were reporting that they stole. The early report said they stole $400,000 worth of jewelry from this guy. A second report said $1 million. A Rolex should cost you $10,000 or $15,000. So how are you making your way all the way up to $1 million worth of jewelry as a pastor? And you get robbed in Brooklyn. That's obvious. That's so obviously going to happen because there's a woman in Brooklyn right now who's probably getting mugged for $40, bro. So I guess I said all that to say, who is really enforcing these mask rules when you actually have real crime that's happening in at least some of these American cities?
I think a bishop might be in charge of an area of churches. I know a cardinal's obviously a represent. There's 12 or 13 cardinals, and and there's an archdiocese who's in charge of like a whole region
that was
or city. I don't know.
That wasn't the
Bishop might be
important.
the person above the priest.
That wasn't the important part
That
of the
bishop
question.
needs a gun, Eric, is what we're learning.
You're harping. Okay, that part. I want to know how we're forcing the rules.
The thing is that it's brilliant. I mean, that's what they did from the beginning. Is they never had to enforce the rules because they got the citizens to. You know, from the very start. You know, even these vaccine passports and all of it, they were never actually completely legal. Like they couldn't be government mandated to, you know, go into these businesses, but they said, hey, we'll build the infrastructure so that you can have everybody's medical information. And then if you guys want to do it, you can do it. But then they also made the stigma around any business that didn't do it so harmful that every business was like, okay, well, I'm not going to take the hit and, you know, be like, come off as anti-vax and then have 90% of the population, because that's what our rate is up here, be like vehemently against us. So it was kind of like I mean, it's scary, but that's literally how they did it, was just made it so that the citizens enforced it. And, you know, you walked into a store without wearing a mask, you know, they didn't need some police officer or, you know, bylaw officer to give you a ticket because every single person in that store would say something to you.
Crazy.
Well, speaking of guns, Eric, we're going to go to the IRS
Were we
stuff.
speaking about guns?
I was. The other side of the story is that I watched 2 of the Death Wish movies. Do you guys know those movies? Oh, it's in 70s and 80s movies starring the guy named Charles Bronson. He'll just randomly move to some city. It's New York in the later ones. And then there's gangs there. And this is like a 50, 60-year-old man just sniping people with revolvers from 200 yards away. It's hilarious. But I digress. So the other side of the story they tried to give for the IRS training videos that came out was like, this training was happening already. So they kind of think that they're debunking something, but what's actually happening is they're showing you that they've been training nerds to use guns, in like poor police training for nerds who are doing tax audits. They've been training them to use guns for a long time, and it's embarrassing the people that they're training for it. And here's some photos. We've got a guy in a wheelchair who's supposed to be wielding a gun. I don't know. I don't understand this. I don't understand how you make a guy in a wheelchair a field agent for something where he has to collect money. And this is probably what Ben Shapiro and the like say when they say, or what they mean when they say this is being enforced by gunpoint. So here's a fake arrest, and you can see all the people there. There's a classroom. We've got our masks on.
It's like a community college.
This girl's vest isn't even on. This girl's is off to the side because she's using it to lean her elbow on. It's weird that she's standing behind him, and they're pointing the gun at this guy's unmasked. He's dangerous, also dangerous. This guy, and then I think there's one more, and so again, this is the training that they're going through, Eric. And of course, the DNC side of the story is that, the reason they hired 87,000 more IRS agents is because they want to get you your income tax return faster. That's the story that I heard from the left-wing sources, whereas the right-wing sources are saying, they're going to be coming for you with the guns. But I think what the obvious thing to parse from this is that Biden administration is just milking everything they can to get all the money out of it. And what they're going to do now is they're going to be trying to get as much money they can from the populace, because people are saying, we don't like your overspending. So they're just like, let's see how we can get even more money out of people. And that comes with auditing, literally everybody. And they didn't say, that they're going to tax people over $400,000 dollars a year. And Biden's own guy said, oh, no, we never said that. But what they're going to do is they're going to try to get as much money out of you through the tax code that they have by enforcing things that they normally wouldn't enforce, is how I'm taking it, Eric. I don't know if you want to jump in there on that. Do you have any opinion?
Yeah, well,
you want to move on to mullets?
Well, just really quickly, they are, so they're not raising the taxes. They're just going to enforce what they weren't enforcing, except for, as we know, our favorite presidential son, Hunter Biden, will not face the consequences of this at all, even though on top of his laptop, on top of his weirdo crack smoking stuff, he does have a pretty big tax problem as well. And my one thing about this is, as you know, Andrew, I do have perhaps a minor case of PTSD just from living in New York and getting rug pulled with my job and Andrew Cuomo and all that stuff. But this, to me, looks very similar to those phony fake testing facilities where you take a class of community college kids and you tell them that, okay, well, we're going to give you class credits or you're going to get paid minimum wage. Think about the kids at that testing facility. They're not nurses. They have this box of giant Q-tips that they're jamming up people's noses until it touches their brain. They're wearing these oversized orange vests, and they're throwing around a football. They've set up hammocks. That's what this looks like to me, is that they take the lowest common denominator of people who either most likely don't know what's going on, and they read some classified and says, oh, well, I can go apply for this job. I truly don't think these are people like big, vote blue no matter who people. These are just people who are kind of desperate. They're not following politics. They're not playing the game at all. They're just like, oh, job opportunity. So they go there, and then you get these incredibly mediocre people who aren't passionate about anything. They don't like Joe Biden. They don't hate Joe Biden. They don't know what's going on, but they do know that this is an opportunity for me to, maybe climb, so instead of the $15 an hour I was getting at Target, now I'm getting $25 an hour to learn how to point a gun at some small business owner. So I guess the point I'm trying to make here is these are not passionate people like you have, I used to be in real estate, so I follow these people who are passionate about real estate, or you have guys like Brandon Tatum who really love the police and they're passionate about that. These people aren't passionate about anything. They just know that this is going to pay the bills at least temporarily until some other politician or some other person comes in and dissolves the whole thing. And then that group of people who will eventually dissolve this horrible idea is going to be looked at as villains, and the cycle will repeat in some other. And last thing here, I promise, this is always how we see when they wanted to do the ministry of truth, but it got too much backlash. So then they just looked over to the social media company and said, all right, just start censoring these people. And then when remember it was a year or so ago, and Nancy Pelosi said, we're going to monitor anything over $600, and that got too much backlash. So this is their workaround for that. And unfortunately, it's these no shade. I venture to say that a community college is probably far superior than paying going in debt $100,000 to go to a real college or quote unquote 4-year college. But these people don't really know what's going on, and it's sad to watch the demise of our society right in front of us. Like, we are in the war, bro. We're living through it right now.
I will say just
like
one
the use of Target.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Yeah, just one fact that I think is super important whenever people talk about IRS is even the 2021. I'm looking at their stuff right now. From 2021, their income tax returns. The lowest income wage earners, so that means people with an anti-poverty earned income credit, were audited at a rate of 13 per 100. So, and then you take in all taxpayers to that equation, and they get audited at a rate of 4.1 per 1,000 and 13 per 1,000. Sorry, not 100. But so lowest income wage earners get audited at 3 times the rate. We're not even talking about middle class. We're not talking about the people that everyone is typically saying, oh, this is who Biden and the IRS is going to go after. The truth is that the lowest income earners, the people that can't afford even to go to court because they can't get a lawyer or any of this kind of stuff. So they're just they get a bill and they have no option but to pay it. And that's who gets audited at nearly a 3 times the amount rate of the average tax worker. So it's like, they're not, when people support these policies and are like, oh, tax the rich, it's like, yeah, that's not going to happen. I'm sorry. All the rich that you say they're going to tax are the ones that are paying for these campaigns of these politicians that are making these policies. You really think they're getting like their campaign donations and then going to go turn on all those people? Like, it's like, no.
And even if we were to tax the rich, we know that those people just have more means to fight back against this stuff. Like the guy who's making $25,000 in a year just doesn't have the means. He's got to go to work every single day to collect these coins, and then they're going to put him on a payment plan or something. Meanwhile, a guy and we're not even talking not even in the millionaire bracket, but say if you're bringing in 400,000, that's the line they like to use. That's still plenty of money to say, you know what, I'm going to push back on this just a little bit. So it's despicable.
Yeah, you talk about. I had some interesting Twitter replies for the Inflation Reduction Act, and I just was marveled at the fact that how quickly Democrat supporters become people who are supportive of the government telling you what to do and supportive of big pharma, because the Inflation Reduction Act, by even Bernie Sanders standards, the Pentagon, I believe, even, and then all these left-wing sources, Washington Post, they say it's not going to affect inflation. If it is, it's 0.1%, and that's several years from now. The stuff they're saying about reducing pharmaceutical costs, and this was a point of contention somebody had with me, was that they give them the opportunity to negotiate. And I said that inherently and by definition doesn't mean that the prices will go down. It gives not Veterans Affairs, Medicare and their people a chance to negotiate with the pharmaceutical companies starting in 2026. So not only is it you have to reelect Joe Biden in order for this to be pushed through even further and be enforced, you also are only giving them the opportunity. So if you trust the people who run Medicare and the people who run the pharmaceutical companies to bargain the debate and have a bargain price for you and the lowest price possible, I think you're dreaming. Also, that's 4 years from now, and so the prices from then in almost half a decade from now are probably going to be higher than they are now. So the idea that you're going to somehow save money before now and then is crazy. I forget what else is in there. It's all green energy stuff, and it's all grants for electric cars. And you saw that the electric car prices went up by the same amount of price that it's going to be reduced for, that you'll get a rebate on. So all you have to do is spend $50,000 for this car and you'll get $5,000 back. Everybody has $45,000 for that. There was another thing in there. All you have to do is buy new water pumps and all this stuff. So they're alleging that they're going to save people tons of money by telling them that they have to go out and spend thousands of dollars in order to get a few $1,000s back. And Eric, I know you've heard me say this many times, that it goes back to this theory of, as long as it's my energy billionaires who are making all the money, then it's somehow better for the environment. And I was talking to my older brother yesterday, and he went to school and studied wind engineering, as in wind energy and the engineering behind that. And he's still telling me that there's still no energy source that he knows of that is good for the environment. And of course, wind energy kills all these bats and all these birds, and then they don't biodegrade. And when they break, they cost millions of dollars to fix. So they just leave them to rot in the ground. They take up so much space. Then you've got the solar panels that leave solar waste, and they're most predominantly made by China, and they don't have a good yield. And then you have to tear out all these crops, all these things.
I see. To point out, 40% of those solar panels made by China are actually made by Uyghur slaves. So it's like, it's not even being made. It's like the solar panel industry is 100% dependent on slave labor at this point.
And it's all these insane things, and nowhere in that does.
So not only
is it
are we
supposed
beholden to
get
China,
inflation down,
but they're using slave labor. So not only are we forced to get the stuff from China, and if that were, fine, whatever, it's cheapest to get it in China. And now that we know that the majority, or did you say 40%? So maybe not the majority, but a good percentage of them are actually being produced by slaves. So that's like a double whammy. So it's like, even if you could have gotten some cheap labor in China, now you're getting slave labor in China, and they want you to, and let the media tell it. When I see a handful of accounts on Instagram posting, look how much you're going to save from the Inflation Reduction Act. And of course, their only little quote is that the drug bargaining thing that's not going to even happen until 2026, and it's not even guaranteed. But if you are a small percentage of the people who need X medication that comes from a pharmacist, then you might save money in 3 years. And that's what they're celebrating.
If the stuff is covered by Medicare. Otherwise, if it's something else, then it's not going to happen. We're running out of time here, but I want to do some quick flash images. We'll get some comments on it. The first thing, we got like 4 or 5 things to get to here. There is apparently Eric Butler, a U.S. mullet championships for kids 13 and under. He's got the Pit Vipers on in one photo. I mean, I didn't even realize that was 2 different photos there. And like they just got these kids and the mullets. I don't know if this is done on purpose. This kid's Brock and William. Let's take a look at them. Eric, anything at all about this, about white people based on this, basically?
No, I mean, I don't know these kids from Ham Sandwich. It looks like it could be a fun time. Like maybe there's a barbecue involved, and somebody's drunk uncle might have blown off his hand doing fireworks. That's what I think about. I don't. Is this? Are they facing backlash? Is this a racist? Are these haircuts racist?
No, it's just hilarious.
Okay,
I was gonna say this is the only
comment.
This is the only child beauty pageant I can get behind.
Okay, right. I just want to make sure that we're not
plot twist. They're all John Daly's kids.
Exactly. John Daly's the GOAT. I can definitely get behind that for sure. But yeah, it seems like a good
get that one because I want Eric's opinion on that one. Let's get Liam's opinion on this one. This is from an Amazon factory. They give you, I believe, this break every hour or so of a minute long, and they tell you this is a mind moment for positive affirmation, and they get you to repeat phrases. Even in chaos, I can feel peaceful. I notice the good. While socially distant, I'm emotionally close. Liam, weren't you saying that you've covered this?
I posted it the other day, and I was like, this is something straight out of a dystopian movie. But like, it's funny because the first 2, like even in chaos, I can feel peaceful and I notice the good. Those aren't actually bad. Like whether they're an Amazon, whether it's an Amazon affirmation or whether it's just something you say in the morning, those aren't bad. The one that really gets me is the while socially distant, I am emotionally close. I'm like, there is nothing more fucking dystopian than that. To be like, that's pod living. That's Ready Player One type shit. Like, what are we doing here? I think that for sure, if I was working at anywhere and they told me to deal with that while getting told to piss into water bottles and then just be like, oh, hey, well, you're upset about pissing into a water bottle. Have you tried, an affirmation? That might make you feel better. I'd fucking...
Yeah, like, excuse me, Liam, but have you been doing your affirmations today? Did you stare at the dot and repeat the phrases?
Yeah.
That's going to be 6 affirmations, actually, as punishment.
Yeah.
Get back in your piss jugs.
These are the people,
straight in them.
This is the company that we were this was our go-to people during the virus. So all the mom and pops were shut down. You couldn't go buy a pair of shoes at a regular place, but you could order for Amazon nonstop. And it's like this catch-22. It's like they want you to, live in the pod and, live in this Black Mirror episode and everything comes to your house. But then on the other side of that coin, they say, well, all of these corporations are evil, which I think they are. I mean, that doesn't make them any less convenient, right? Like that doesn't, we still have to live in this world, but it's crazy how they want to take both sides of it. Like these are the only people that are allowed to operate during the most deadly virus, but we also hate them. And same thing with Elon, buy an electric car, but not a Tesla.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. All right, we got this one for Eric. No matter how sweetly you ask it, where are you from? Is not a polite question. Says Yuju Anya, who's a alleged professor, anti-racist feminist research language. And I thought that the a terrible statement that it's sad for this person who says, "Oh no, this is devastating to me. I live in a big city and there are lots of immigrants and I want to understand them and their journey, and now I don't know how. I'm sorry to anyone I've asked for it." Sad face. And this is a 121 quote tweet, so people are probably doling out their advice. And then she chimes back, the person who posted it, "You can ask do you consider home is a better choice, or even volunteer your home first and talk about your origins. Then allow the person to tell you what they want."
Yeah.
So completely capitulate to this stranger.
Peak dystopian Democrat doublespeak, like how Kathy Hochul is now saying that you can't use the term inmate, you have to use incarcerated people. Obviously, we
That's
saw
true.
the birthing person and all this stuff. This is peak. It's obviously not beneficial to anybody. It's just them letting you know that you're going to talk how we want you to talk. You're going to obey what we tell you. Now, I will say that I'll spare you the long story about why I have the Detroit hat, but I grew up in Oakland, California. And to her point, maybe she's got a little bit going for her on this one, because when somebody pulls up to you in Oakland, California and says, "Where are you from?" that's not a conversation you're going to want to be having, bro. I promise you that.
All right, last one for you, Liam. I want to know your favorite choice out of these elementary school names. They're changing Robert E. Lee because it's racist. We can't have Robert E. Lee anymore. We've got Drew Brees Elementary quarterbacks. This is probably a New Orleans-based school. Bruce Lee Elementary, John Cena Elementary, Adolf Hitler School for Friendship and Tolerance, and Schoolie McSchoolface. Which one are you going with, bro?
Personally, I'd choose Schoolie McSchoolface. But if they put in John Cena Elementary School, then I bet you would have a lot of Chinese investments, and then you could even have Mandarin being the second learned language in that school.
That's true. I was saying earlier that all police dispatches should be in Chinese just to get you ready for your future.
Yeah.
It's Schoolie McSchoolface is obviously a ripoff of Bodie McBoatface, which was a voted upon vessel, I think possibly in the Australian Navy. Eric's going with probably John Cena to try to get him to show up to his school. Right?
No, I'm actually going with Bruce Lee, and I think it's only because Bruce Lee has fact check me on this, but I think Bruce Lee has some ties to the Bay Area, so that would literally be the only reason I would go with that.
In what way?
No, I don't know. You'd have to Google it, but I swear he shot some movies in the Bay, or he was.
Oh well, maybe that's true.
Something like he had some ties. I know we're running out of time, so we'll
shout out Brandon Lee.
To be continued.
The Crow. All right, Liam, tell everybody. Oh,
because he was born in San Francisco. That's why Bruce Lee was born in San Francisco.
What?
Sorry. According to Wikipedia.
That's stupid. I don't like it. He's actually just a white guy.
Yeah.
Liam, where can everybody find you?
I'm most active on Instagram at liam.out.loud. Also, I will be getting back into long forum YouTube videos as well. Liam DeBoer or Liam Out Loud on YouTube. You may end up both also getting a little kid that does roller coaster videos, so that's interesting. I mean, we have kind of polar opposites. His parents actually lost it on me once. They were like, "You're using the same name as us and you're putting out this content." I was like,
"How dare you have a similar name?"
Yeah,
or the same name.
Yeah.
No, I would look forward to a video by you about. I have to remember that I'm not fully on screen. This is what I was doing. I would like to see a video about the stuff you were saying with the Rockefellers, because
that's actually going to be my next one. The public school system.
There you go.
So
about the school system. Yeah. Eric, of course, went to private school, an all-black racist private school in San Diego, where he learned to shoot guns. Right?
That is factually inaccurate. I've never lived in San Diego. I did go to a majority black private school in Oakland, California.
Wow, I didn't even know that.
Only because Oakland, California, even back in those days, the schools were terrible. And I thank my mom, because she did have a little bit of inside track knowledge on the school system. And this is the only reason I'm not standing in Times Square pretending that there's 100 states in the country or whatever these stupid kids are doing.
Or the reason why you're not underwear guitar guy either. That could be you as well.
I have a funny story about him also. Maybe we'll get to that at a later date. But he's compromised. He's compromised. I'll put it that way.
Oh, interesting. All right. I do look forward to that. Maybe that's worth a video. Eric Butler at TatumReport.com. And of course, Report and Opine on Instagram. Report and Opine, I meant to say. And of course, we're shouting out Alt Reporter because they share our stuff. And Eric does videos on that website, altreporter.com. Me, myself, rebelnews.com or andrewsaystv.com. Subscribe to this podcast or we will find you and we will bake you a cheesecake, Eric Butler.
Turn it up, Jordan.